record of his computer. All right, so we are here on October 11th, 2024 with Daniel Carnahan, who's going to be doing CO5, correct? Your master
Yes.
assessment.
Yes.
And we're recording this for Steve Keels, who's unfortunately laid up with his back or his broken ribs and punctured lung, all crazy stuff
Wow.
for Bob Maddox. So let me start with prayer and then we'll make sure we are on the same page and then we'll get started.
Sounds good.
Father, thank you for your goodness and your love for us. I thank you for Daniel. I thank you just for the hard work he's done over the months and that we've been working through all these various things. And I pray that today, as we hear the things that you've been teaching him, that we would be encouraged, that you'd be glorified, and Father, that we would be able to rejoice with Daniel for just the work you've been doing in and through his life. So we give this time to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So we're CO5, just to make sure we're all on the same page, is going to look at the church and what's related to that, correct? When we did the assessment, I mean, we did a doctrinal statement and we created an assessment tool. Or
I
was
think,
that moved? Because you guys had it in
yeah,
CO2.
I think I did it. We did that in two.
Okay, yep. So that would be in the cohorts after you. Okay, so we're really just going to look at marriage and family, healthy family, right? And the issue of conflict resolution.
Yeah. That's what the things I had that we did in five was the coaching component with Bob,
All right.
also family, marriage and family, and then we did the conflict resolution.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, when when you started, we did it with CO2 was super long, and then we actually cut that down, and then we moved actually coaching out of this one to another one.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
when my brain's all scrambled, but now I'm dialed in. So you're good to go. We'll turn over
It's,
the time to you, and why don't you walk us
I
through
get it too. It's been enough too, where I'm like, what? This is right. Isn't it? This is what it is. Yeah. All right. So yeah, this, uh, character outcome, becoming a healthy relator. And we just kind of like, as we said, as we got going, talk through coaching and had a couple of great times with Bob. And then we're challenged to do some coaching sessions ourselves. And I think out of that, I think that's been a pretty significant piece. One of the ways that I think about my role at church is to be, to empower people and to equip people. And a lot of that comes in of the coaching model, because it is like, no, you have the ability to make the decision that you need to make, and I'm here to like support you in that and help you find the next steps forward, find out what you need to do. And so, as I think, with my staff team that I'm working with, but also with the different volunteers that we have, it's really like these good coaching questions to them, like, well, what do you need to do next? Well, is there something that would be helpful for you to grow in? Is there something that's, something that you just know that you need to take care of? Is there a connection you need to make with somebody? I like that. It's been really helpful in my job. When that's one specific place where it's really stood out to me.
Have you ever tried it on Dallas without her knowing?
I try to ask some questions sometimes, but then I'm like, you know, I'm not helping you on purpose. I'm trying this coaching thing out for a little bit. Not helping, right? But I'm not going to fix this, which
Yeah.
is the right thing to say, right? But I'm not. Why don't we try this idea? Let me ask you some questions so we can have good clarity on what needs to be true next.
So who are some of the people that you coached? You said you
Yeah.
coached Bob. That was more
Um,
the practice part of it, right?
yeah. So working with Lindy and, well, the practice part that I did, Lindy and I were working through something pretty significant, but it was something that, again, like in that mindset, like I have given her the authority to lead and figure out what we needed to do next. But we're doing it together. And so then, it gets interesting when you're coaching and you're really involved with a situation. But that's part of like empower, the word empowering, like, no, you have the authority to do this. What do you see that we need to do? And so started talking, and I'm like, I'm just like, pause, Lindy. I'm gonna like, let's take a time out. I'm gonna practice this coaching stuff that I've been learning with school for this particular matter. So I'm not gonna suggest what I think we should do, but I'm just gonna like like ask these questions to bring clarity to you on we need to do, what you need to do, but what we need to do about this situation.
How
And
did
so
that go?
really good. Yeah.
How did
But
that work?
it
How
was
did that work
good.
out?
It worked out. She was just holding on. Like she knew what needed to do, but just kind of that, like, is this really what we need to do? But a couple of questions, it's like, okay, I know the path forward. I know the next steps we need to do. Need to take in that. And um, it's been
Well,
good. It was around a relationship and somebody, and so that has obviously relationship has continued, and so it's good to keep the way that we work together through that. Um, in that same role. So it's consistent.
yeah,
Here's how we're making decisions. Here's what we're doing. Here's how we're figuring out what we need to do.
good. And did
Yeah.
she feel, I mean, through that process, what was her response?
Yeah. Um, I, it is, I think it's a tougher thing to work out to try to figure out. Right. And so it's easy to be like, no, like you here, take it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't, you, Daniel, just go ahead and say what to do. Um, but I think she's accepting that responsibility and carrying the weight of figuring out what to do in that well. But it is, well, that was one of the things I appreciated. Bob's response was like, he taught through this model of like coaching is asking the questions, but he's like, but it is really hard to live that out. And so coaching in reality turns into a little bit of advice as you're, helping them think through it for themselves, figure out. So that's helpful where it's not like it's all just like hands off. I'm not supposed to do it, but you can stay in it with them, which is really good.
So you said that Lindy, by the time you were done, she had come up to a conclusion and been able to land on solving the problem that she
Yep.
had posed at the beginning.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. 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 The uh, Another big part of this was the conflict resolution model that we worked on together as a cohort. And I think the one of the big things out of that is relationships we talked a lot through like a fracture of a bone and then how you could repair it back together. And relationships get fractured often. And I'd be like, rub some dirt on it type of a person. If you sprain your ankle, rub some dirt on it, hop around a little bit, you'll be fine. You'll get over it. We don't need to pay any attention to it.
probably good
It's
that she didn't become a medical doctor then.
easy. Right. But it's easy. I mean, I don't know that's any better as a pastor. Like when
I
relationships
agree.
are a little like off, I'm kind of like, give it a day, like give it a week, we'll be fine. You'll stop, you'll get over that limp. We'll just kind of get along. And so it's a helpful image for me to have in my head. Like, no, relationships do get fractured at times, and it takes more than like wait a couple of days for it to get better. But at times, it takes some really intentional stepping into it, acknowledging the pain, caring for it, all the things. And so that image alone is really helpful for me to carry along as somebody who would much rather just be like, well, we'll be fine in a couple of days.
Mhm.
Um, but sometimes and often it's more than that. And so to have a model and to walk through it for myself, my own mind, but also in relationships to have this like, no, there's a process. And even for me, it can feel like, oh, if there's a little something wrong, it might never get any better. But to be like, no, like it might not, but if we have this process here, both sides are interested in it, you can get to like repair it in the right way and not just be worried about, oh, if I even acknowledge that it's broken, they're just going to chop it off. That's not what's going to go on most likely. So
So you went through the text and you came up with a model. Your model is, can you share a little bit about your model?
sure, I'll pop it up right here. We came up with our model. We came up with CARE as an acronym to walk through what we did. And so the C is conflict arises.
Are you showing this on the screen? Because I'm not seeing it if you are.
I am looking at it, but I will
Yeah, why
hit
don't you show it
share
on the screen? I
screen.
think that'll help both Bob and
Yeah,
Steve. Because I love the acronym. I mean, what a great acronym for conflict resolution, right, CARE?
yeah.
And if you go with the broken bone aspect, that too, it goes well with that. So
Is that you see this care
I do.
right? Okay, yep.
So can you make that larger? Can you
Yeah, that's
isolate?
what I'm not 100% sure what you see,
Well,
but
don't
it,
worry about it. It's very visible. So, all right. So go ahead and walk me through. There you go. That's great.
I had it to the side, so I scratched out. Okay. So care, conflict arises. Relationship leads us to work or repair that relationship. Really, love leaves us into that. And so we need to, as we acknowledge that there's a conflict, which I think is our next address the conflict, but we want to move into that with humility, but also in a timely manner, not just again, my would be like give it a little bit of time, and then if we need to, we'll move into it. But no, like because of love, I don't want to just let it maybe be okay, but I want to step in and care for that in humility. And then you address the conflict, you speak the offense, you communicate, and in communicating, you're seeking to understand, you're listening, you're considering not just one side, but all the factors that went into it, admitting like I have a contribution if we have a conflict. Maybe there's some things that I most likely there's some things that I did. And then even like as we talk about it, do we need somebody else to come in and help us see the situation? Or times are like, are we the mediator who needs to come alongside people and care for that as you seek to understand what the conflict really is, what's truly going on? And then once you do that, you're able to resolve the conflict, move to some kind of resolution. Um, As you work to resolve a conflict, there'll be confession and repentance. You'll understand the cost of it. Sometimes there's more to it than just admitting and repenting, but there's some kind of cost that needs to be paid back. You're willing to accept the consequences for that to be, and then also it obviously takes forgiveness on both sides to choose to forgive the offense, the conflict in between each other. And then we talked about some of the effects of a conflict. And this is where just admitting all the possible outcomes and knowing what they could be.
Mm,
Um, Matthew 18, we see the beauty of mercy and forgiveness, but it also reveals that there are some circumstances that require restitution, consequences, and even sometimes it's discontinued relationship. So we have the different pictures over here. Sometimes as you walk through this model, it leads to restoration and you're all the way healed. Sometimes it's a slow healing process where there's some justice involved. There's a repair of trust. So different things go on. Sometimes I think there's a small fracture right in here in this bone that you can see.
yeah.
Sometimes the relationship continues, but there are new boundaries, things that are put in place to protect one side or the other or both of you. And then sometimes like you address the conflict and the other side is not willing to. And so you could end up with a broken, discontinued relationship,
Mm.
um, which is already there. And so if you ignore the model, if you don't try, then you're just sitting there with this broken bone. But if you at least take the steps that are laid out for us as what we do as Christ followers, but also take these steps. There's clear, like it is discontinued, but there's an invitation into it. I haven't just said it's discontinued. I'm never talking to you again, but no, I want to address this. I'd like to move to restoration, move to healing. Come on, come join me in that.
And then how have you used this model?
Yeah. Um, I'm trying to think of like, I don't know specific examples of when I've stepped into this. I've been way better. I think, I mean, so there are some things, but smaller things. I don't know that there's a significant
Yeah.
conversation, but I'm way quicker to like address the conflict, um, as I was talking about earlier, than just try to like silence it and ignore it.
Mm.
Um, I don't know, silence is the wrong thing, but just so in my marriage with Dallas, when there's something that's going on and we're not speaking the same thing, to just kind of take a pause and address like, hey, we aren't hearing each other right now, or there's something in the way. Let's talk about what's going on and not just try to move on past it.
So how is this in particular, this whole Ellie, have you used any of this with your team? Have you taught them this in your team? How have you used this whole learning experience?
Yeah. Um, I have not. I've talked along some of these, but I haven't walked through this model. I haven't used this model anywhere.
Okay. Do you think it would be a value to use? I mean, having created it with the, with the others and then having just walked through it, do you think that would be a helpful approach?
Yes, yep, I do. We at But I had planned, since we did this together as a cohort at staff. I help coordinate our staff lunches at work, and there've been a couple times where I've set up and then different things have interrupted, schedules changed for Christy, and in talking with Putnam and Brink even, like, let's let's lead our staff through this to talk through, because it is such a helpful thing. But we have not. It's interesting, yeah, just some of the things. Life happens, right, as you're going along making plans, and so we haven't.
But that is in the works, or you had it planned, then it got moved, but it's still in the, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because again, I love the acronym. I think you have addressed things in a really good way, so I really like it.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, got that. And then a big piece of this is marriage and family, and we did a lot of learning and reading and about marriages and even singleness. Touched on that a little bit, and then thinking about families as well. Journeying through that, I thought a helpful thing for I don't at that time had done a couple of memorials and walked with a couple of people through some really hard things, and yeah, just kind of felt like there was this like building community that I was around and a part of that was facing a lot of grief and a lot of difficult things. And so I wanted to, for my family, but also for other families, provide a tool and a way to have conversations around, like, well, what do we do when we're hurting?
Mhm.
And who is God? Is God there in the middle of all the hurt? And so spent a lot of time reading resources and studying the Bible, thinking about grief, and out of that developed this. I've developed a talk, and also this like framework to be able to talk about what happens when you hurt, and specifically for like elementary. My boys are at the time were like 11 and 13, 10 and 11 and 13. They're 12 and 14 now, but like just like here's a real first thought about it, and then how do we translate that physical thought about it into what's going on inside of us, piece. And so
Did you write, because it came through at first in a story form,
yeah,
and then I watched your talk, which I loved, absolutely, and it actually helped me to decode the story.
yeah, right, yeah,
I understand. I mean, my brother-in-law likes to write movies, and if you look at the way they write that, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure I fully get this. But when you see the movie then and you go back, and you're like, okay, that totally makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
So did the story come first, and then out of that came the talk?
The talk came first, I think,
Okay.
is even weirder trying to translate back, and then I was like, okay, how can I make this into a children's book, and what phrases, what short sentences can I use to move the story along, but that a 7-year-old would turn through and read, or a
Yeah.
parent could read with their 5-year-old, that kind of thing.
And your talk, give me a little bit of like the talk. I love the hook with the bike.
Yeah.
I thought that was, and you carried it all the way through. It's really well done. Where did you actually do that talk?
I did that for the school chapel, so that the audience was kindergarten through 8th graders. Um,
Maybe you can talk just a little bit about that for Bob and Steve if they're unaware of what that was all about.
sure. So in thinking about grief, I um, I thought about how our physical pain helps us really, again, I just said a minute ago, but how our physical pain can really help us think about our spiritual, our soul, emotional pain, and process. Thinking through that, we all do have this same response when we get hurt. We either try to like downplay it, or it makes us really angry and we rise up into shouting at people and chasing people off. And so, you know, I growing up, I lived on a hill and would ride my bike on the hill all the time. And one day just totally wiped out. And I still have scars on my elbows and knees from those things, but a couple are from that day. And all my friends are around, and all the things happen, and if you're hurt and embarrassed because you just had a bike wreck, you're hurt all the way through, right? I'm bleeding, I'm hurt. But you pop up and you're like, I'm totally fine. Don't worry about me. You guys go on with your day. I'll be fine over here. Just this idea, like, I'm not going to talk about that I'm hurt right now or that I'm embarrassed or laugh it off. I'm just going to try to act like everything's completely fine. And then you start trying to move a little bit. I started walking up the hill, and then it's like I'm hurting a bit. And my mom is a nurse, and so as I get closer to the house, she like sees that I'm bleeding, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And then it's again like somebody sees you and cares about you and wants to help you, and often our response again is like, "No, I'm fine. Don't don't talk to me about it right now." But then at some point, it becomes really clear that you're not fine. And for me, it's like there's blood running down my arms, dripping off my fingers. There's blood like all the way down my legs. I'm not fine. There's no way I can be. And so then, but also I know like if my mom cares for me, she's gonna pour the great stuff on you to make you feel better. That stings and hurts again. And it's like I don't know that I want to hurt anymore. I hurt enough as it is. But sometimes, and not sometimes, but it is like for us to be healed by God. Jesus says in the Beatitudes, like, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And to be able to mourn, that's accepting and announcing that you have some pain and letting some pain like hit who you are. And with God, with all of us, but with God, it's like I can't admit even that I've got this heart pain, this heart hurt right now. Um, and Jesus instead steps in and says, "You can, and you will be comforted not just by somebody, but by me." Um, and so, for us to be able to say, when we hurt, when we're grieving, we can talk with God, and God knows that we are, just like my mom could see and everybody around could see. You're plainly bleeding, Daniel. You're hurt. You need somebody to care for you. God plainly sees us. He knows that we're hurting, and he says, "I'm here to comfort and care and repair and restore," like all the things, right? Just come to me. Um, and we can. And I love to just that the same reminder, here's Jesus with Mary and Martha when Lazarus died, and Mary and Martha both say to Jesus, "If you'd been here, everything would be fine. We wouldn't be in this." Jesus didn't say like, "How dare you question where I was or what was going on?" But he's like, "Yeah, but also here's my plan, and I'm here with you." And even he tears, he cries in that moment. He enters into their mourning, their suffering with them, and loves them through it, not just like in spite of it or instead of it, around it, but with them in it. And so just as we carry grief, as we carry hurt, whatever, all kinds of levels, right? But as we do that, we don't have to try to hide it so that nobody knows what's going on. We don't have to try to ignore it or block it or run away from it. But we can, with those who love us, mourn and grieve. And it's in that we're comforted and healed.
And then you had an application at the end, right?
I probably did.
With the
Uh,
kids, they were
yeah.
supposed to look at somebody else, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, in that it's like yeah, and the great thing is like as God comforts us, he then sends us out as comforters. And so let's be ready and standing. I know enough of the kids in the school, and several of them are the reason that I wanted to like one of the reasons that I wanted to work on this. They're going through all the things of life. Parents are separating, parents have died, tough family things going on, sicknesses. Anyway, but we've all got something, and so to look and see who's comforting, who's hurting, and be ready to be that comfort.
Yeah, that was really
Yeah,
powerful
yeah,
because you gave the kids a really practical thing. I think if I recall, you had them look for somebody and to pray for that person.
yeah.
But based on what you had already said, they also were equipped to be able to move in and just be a friend. So, yeah, that was good. The book side of it, Are you planning on publishing that? Are you wanting to see that come together or what?
Yeah, I would like to. I haven't I've done some more editing on my end of it, trying to make it make sense. But yeah, the next step would be to try to figure out, yeah, the publishing, what kind of audience or how to sell that or self-publish it, whatever those things are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you thinking, do you need an illustrator?
I do need an illustrator.
Do you know anybody in the church that could do that for you?
Uh, um, I don't know. I haven't asked anybody specifically. One of my sons likes to draw a lot, and so I was like, "You should do some illustrating for me." And he wasn't ready to jump on it, but I'm gonna bug him again about it.
Huh. That'd be interesting is I mean, if he was the illustrator for the book, that'd be pretty cool at that age.
Yeah.
I mean, kid would get a sense of, oh, I think I can draw somewhat like that. Maybe not quite as
Right.
good, but that'd be
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, in terms of this character outcome, healthy relator, what are some things that it really God used to continue to help mold you or to think about relating well with other people?
Yeah.
Whether
Yeah.
it's a home
I think two of the huge things, again, is I having a model and some tools to have good like conflict resolution, to be able to step into conflict and know, um again, I mean, even like the through grief, like conflict happens and it's okay, and it's good to have conversations about it. um that's a really helpful thing that I need, and I need to keep reminding myself of. And then the tools to be a coach as I lead and work with people in kids ministry, staff and volunteers, and asking people to do this, to just kind of hear their problems and then talk with them through what could be not, just like, here's exactly what I would do. Why don't you just go do all these things? Sometimes that's helpful, but a lot of times it's what do you see that needs to happen? And then how can you go about doing that, taking those steps, or that step that needs to happen?
Yeah, I remember when I did a coaching thing, and at first I was really skeptical. It's like, come on. But
Yeah.
I went through it, just went through the questions that they said. Okay, here's this phase, and you ask this question, and this one. And at the end, the person was like, oh man, they had the epiphany, they had solved their own problem. I thought, oh my gosh. Just by the virtue of the way it's laid out, it leads to people being able to do that. And I thought, you don't even really need to understand the person's problem. You just
Yeah.
move them through the process, and they, you're just helping them to actually think. So that's cool. I'm glad you were able to do that with Lindy, and especially where it's a joint thing, but you're giving her leadership in that to allow her then to actually come to that conclusion. Because otherwise, you're taking the role of leadership again. So I think
Yeah.
that's a really good
Yeah.
application. Good. Anything else you wanna say to the other two that aren't here?
Uh, no, I think that's, we'll talk through scores, that kind of piece in a moment, but just that, like walking in this healthy relator and thinking about relationships with people, how much, in my role as a pastor, how much it is and has been, like learning about people. And then as children's pastor, thinking about families and marriages and parents. It's like how much I brought into it, but then, and like all that opens up even more with just some key pieces, really, there is good conflict resolution, and don't be hesitant to step into it, but help people with that. And you can unleash people and not just like handhold their way through it all, but unleash them by coaching them along is really good.
It's interesting too because your desire to equip parents to have those conversations and stuff. What a great tool to put in a parent's hand, right? To help their own kids
Right.
say, hey, you can remember this word. Each of those letters has a meaning, and let's just talk about it. Are you planning on using that in part of your training for parents?
Yeah, that is one of the like conversation article pieces for sure.
Good. And have you already launched then that process this fall?
No, I mean, things are happening, but it hasn't like launched. Yeah, yeah.
What's the holdup for the launch?
The I mean, it's our working with the communication team to get the website the way that it needs to be,
Okay.
holding them accountable to, we talked about this, what's going on?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll keep praying towards that.
Thanks. Thanks.
Okay, so we're gonna move now from. Well, let me ask this: is there anything now that you? Well, let me ask you two questions. One is you've been a pastor for over 20 years, right? So, is there any new epiphanies, and maybe that's what you were referring to with actually coming up with a solid model or the coaching? I don't know if those were the epiphanies, or were there other anything else where you're like, oh, I hadn't quite put that together, and I think it'll really help me as I go forward as a
Yeah.
pastor.
No, I think those two pieces are really the what stood out. And were kind of, opened up, um, yeah,
Okay.
different new ways, great ways to think about stuff. So.
All right, well, we're going to move then into the evaluation thing. Do you want me to put up the rubric or you're pretty familiar with that?
I think I'm,
You
yeah,
want, let me
I know
put
what
it up just because we're going to
okay.
have these, so I got to get it here. Give me a chance to pull that up. There we go. Uh, all right. So let me share my screen. All right. Are you seeing that yet? I'm not seeing it. Let me try that again.
Says you started, but I don't see anything there.
Hmm. Well, oh, there we go. I see it. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna do this a little bit for you, but more for Steve and for Bob. Uh, we're gonna do the evaluation part. So there's always the content, character, and craft that's on the left. We're gonna evaluate each of those categories, and you're gonna self-score, and we're gonna score you. Uh, we would not have invited you into the process if it was in the area of a one or a two. We know that you're going to be in the area of 3 and 4. And so I just want to walk through what each of those would be. If you're not competent, that means you're really just starting to be exposed to this whole concept. If it's healthy family or the coach approach or whatever, developing competencies, you're actually starting to put some of those pieces together, and you're able to apply it at times in your life, but you still don't have any kind of a rhythm with that. If you're competent, it means you really do understand the vocabulary, the frameworks, and how everything works. You're actually when you need to pull it out of your toolbox, you can actually use it. It would be something that you could use on a regular basis. And then to move from a 3 to a 4 would be not only is that all true, but you're able to teach it to others. And so that's where we're going to hang out is in this 3 and 4 area. And what I'd like you to do is then give yourself one on content, what you need to know, character, your willingness to submit, your ability to integrate, and then craft, your ability to actually carry it out. Okay, so we'll start with you though.
Yep. So with content, I will give myself 4. I understand the what we learn, what we walk through. I've got an understanding enough where, I think even as a group we made the model, but we're able to take the things that we've learned and as a part of that as well, myself, I'm able to take the things that I've learned and then translate it into a tool, into a teaching for others. Yeah, so I feel good about that piece. Um, with character, I will say a 3. I'm still growing in my readiness to jump in, specifically with resolving conflict and addressing conflict. Um, but I'm beginning to do that and working to be a good model of that. Yeah, in my different areas, different places in life.
Okay.
And then I think with the craft, I'll go back into this 4, where in the work that I do and helping and walking along with families and with kids, that I'm similar to the content, but ready to teach and model and walk with them, equip them to be healthy relators with one another and their families and their world.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think I would, for sure on the content side, four. I mean, I know when we put this model together, you had some really good insights into that. In fact, you may have been the one who suggested the broken bone uh,
Um,
illustration. I don't remember.
I don't remember when we had all those, but I remember all there together talking through it. Yeah.
So that was a good time, and you're always a good contributor to those conversations. Your ability as you just walk through it, you understand the key elements. Especially when I listened to your talk, I thought that you had not only a grasp of the elements, you were able to take those elements from an adult mindset and move it into something that your age group could really understand and would resonate with really well. I mean, when I watched that, I just thought, wow, Daniel did just a super job at relating these more complicated kind of issues and very difficult issues, right? That how do you describe grief to a child, or how do you describe, working through some kind of a very painful situation? I thought you just did it in a way that kids could identify with and actually then say, yeah, you know what, I can totally identify that and I know what to do. I know what my next step would be in that process. So yeah, four I think would be great. Area of character, I would also give you a three. I think it's more to do, and I know your plate's full and you've got lots of things going, but on the area of follow through to make sure you just keep staying on those things. I know you
Yep.
set the time set aside, you move through those things, but I'm a little surprised that the website isn't up and running. And I know that Z has been really busy with the launch of the women's and the men's ministry, and he had lots of things to do there. So that may have been out of your control, but just being able to stay on top of those things. It's not in character like you're lacking in character.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That's not the
Yeah.
issue. It's more that within the context of doing these things that you just really stay doggedly at them. And you may, again, I may have been missing some of that, but sometimes again, if
Yep.
you're spinning a lot of plates, one or two may drop. So,
Sure.
and in the area of craft, again, listening, the fact that you could put together a model and take all that information, synthesize it, and then be able to use parts of it in your daily role. And then also with the coach approach, being able to help somebody on your team actually come to a point of discovery, you're able to use that. I'm sure you're going to need a lot more reps on that aspect of it.
Sure.
And then the other aspect of working through this whole issue of grief and then being able to give a talk on that was very relevant and very well presented to the kids, and then having a book follow out of that where you've got the main structure of the book. Those are all things that are demonstrating your desire and you're moving forward to actually apply that in multiple venues. So I'd give you a four on that also.
Thanks.
So good job.
Thank you.
Let me unshare here. And okay, so what will happen now is I will upload this probably to YouTube and then give them the link so they can watch it. I'll need to wait for them to actually watch it and get their feedback. And then once I get that, I'll put it into the official document and send that off to Kairos. They'll immediately send it back, and then I'll get you the copy of what their comments were and stuff.
Okay. Great.
All right, well,
Thanks.
let me pray for you, and then you're gonna have start of a weekend, hopefully. Are you at home?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm at home where I got water polo tournaments. Levi's got water polo tournament, so heading back to another game in
Oh,
30 minutes or so. So
that docile game.
yeah, right. It's crazy.
My poor daughter, when she first got into that, and she's like, Dad, they were hitting me. They were pulling at my bathing suit. They were pushing me under the water.
Yeah.
She's like, what did I get myself
What are
into?
we doing? That's our first parent meeting. The coach was like, "You're gonna think your kid's getting drowned. If I'm not jumping in there, he's totally fine." It's like, what?
All right, well, let me pray for you. Father, again, I just come before you and I thank you for Daniel. I thank you for just how your spirit has been working in his life and how you used him to work in the lives of many other people. I thank you for his heart for children and for the parents. I pray you just continue to allow that vision to help fit parents to engage with their children in spiritual conversations that continue to unfold. I pray for any hindrance on the communication side with that team, that they'd be able to get a website up and running for them so that that can begin to happen. And again, we thank you for just the talk you gave to those kids who are going through different stages of really difficult things happening, whether it's death or parents separating or whatever it happens to be. That it was such a great message and delivered in such a way that they could really grasp. So I just thank you for Daniel. I thank you for just this whole process that he's been a part of. I pray that you continue to um, help him to be a lifelong learner and to just continue to pour himself out on behalf of others. Pray for Bob and for Steve that you would help them in their assessment process. Pray for Steve right now with his broken rib, punctured lung, and just all the difficulties that are going on with him. Pray that you bring healing to his body and strength. And again, we just thank you for your spirit who lives in us and expresses himself so well when we choose to live lives of faith and obedience. And so we thank you for Daniel too. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the process with your son. Enjoy him getting hopefully not drowned, but
Yep.
not
Drowning
drowning.
others.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Bye
See
bye.
ya.